Next up, you're going to hear from groups 2 and 3 doing a C major scale in a round. These groups have made a lot of progress since our last performance at Darke Hall, and the C major scale is the third scale that they've learned to play on cellos. They've been practicing playing the scale in a round to help us work on playing in tune and introducing playing individual parts. Next up, you'll hear from Group 1 again. Once Group 1 became more confident starting and stopping with rhythms, they began working on building endurance in their bow strokes, so playing the same rhythm multiple times in a row. So they're going to be playing Obwisana, which is a game song from Ghana. Although different versions of the game exist, most versions involve keeping the beat by passing rocks around a circle. And so they've been using this song to work on endurance for their huckleberry rhythm. Next up will be groups 2 and 3, playing Andantino by S. Suzuki. So Andantino is a piece that is full of energy and builds on the groundwork that students laid learning pieces like Allegro and Long, Long Ago. The word Andantino means at a walking pace. Next up will be Group 1. And so while Group 1 worked on their rhythms, they continued working on developing pitch work in the left hand. Then following a successful performance of Hot Cross Buns at the Winter Celebration, they began working on the bread and cheese of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Start, using the tunes Diddle, Diddle, Dumpling and Vengan. We are excited to perform the bread of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star for you this evening using the Strawberry, Strawberry and Run, Doggy, Run, Kitty rhythms. Introduce groups 2 and 3, playing Minuet in C by J.S. Bach. Minuet in C is a graceful and elegant dance from the Baroque era, and this piece introduces students to a steady triple rhythm and clear phrasing, helping them develop a strong sense of timing and style. This piece also introduces the minuet bowing. off the cello performance today. One of the great parts of doing our year-end concert is the opportunity it provides for all of our groups to perform together. So the next two for groups 1 and groups 2 and 3 are going to be performing Cabbages and Twinkle theme all together. Group 2 and 3 are going to be playing the melody, and group 1 will play the D string duet.
Can never be in tune, and we're not going to disprove that tonight. So, but we'll do our best. We're going to start with the beginner class. The beginner class this year was 3 people, Shelley, Anna, and Andrew. Andrew couldn't be here tonight, and Shelley and Anna are going to hold everything up on his behalf. And we're going to start with a traditional Scots tune called Scots Whahay, which was written by Robert Burns. The words for it were written by the famous Scottish poet Robert Burns, and I think put to an old melody. So we're going to hear a bit of that to start. Excellent. So I just wanted to point out that Shelley's had her pipes for less than a year, like you got them late summer. Yeah, late summer. Anna has been playing pipes since February.
Wow.
February. Anna though plays piano and violin and probably a bunch of things that she doesn't admit to also. So, but started in the fall on the practice chatter, learned the basic fingering and a few tunes, and then gradually what you do is you transfer that onto the bagpipe and try to do the same thing at a louder volume with a little more air. So we're going to do another tune. This is a traditional Gaelic air from the west coast of Scotland called the Brown-Haired Maiden, and they're going to play it in kind of a march version. Thank you. Yeah, that was excellent. Now we're going to add these other three pipers into the mix. We have Johnny in the bright color here, and then Wayne next to John, and then Kathy at the end. John and Wayne play in a band together, the RCMP pipe band, but they both started here at the Conservatory, I think, yeah, in beginner piping lessons, and eventually got to the point where they learned a few tunes and wanted to join a band, so they're playing in the local RCMP pipe band. And I think in both are in fact recipients of the King Charles III Coronation Medal for their services to music in the province. Yeah. We'll see how well they do. We might be taking that medal back after this. We're not sure yet. And then Kathy at the end there holds the distinction as being the longest student of the adults. She started, we reckoned, 18 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, in beginner bagpipes. Got a practice chatter and progressed through and has stuck it out all this time. So.
And still does not memorize music.
And still won't memorize music. So music stands, you know.
Don't need to.
Anyway, so this group is going to play all together a very old Scottish tune by the name of Terabas. So I think Shelley and Anna are now going to fade into obscurity. A great hand for them and their... I think Johnny and Wayne are going to treat us to another Robert Burns tune, Rantin' Rovin' Robin. They'll keep the medals for now, I guess. So the next thing we're going to do is a part of a piece of music called a pibroch. Pibroch is a Scots Gaelic word that means pipe music or pipe playing. And it's come to represent a form of music that is otherwise called theme and variation, and in which a basic theme is laid out, and then increasingly complex variations are built on the themal notes, usually increasing subtly in speed and sometimes rhythm as they go. This tune, probably if you played the whole thing, it would be 8 minutes or 9 minutes. And what we're going to do is play what's called the Erler, a Gaelic word for ground, the grounding of the tune, or the main theme. And then we're going to play one variation, and then we'll loop back at the end to finish with a little bit of the theme. But the pipers told me that you people would want to know the story to this tune. And the story is, it's called Sir Ewan Cameron Lochiel's Salute. Is that right?
Yeah.
So Ewan Cameron of Lochiel was a Scottish fellow who lived roughly 1629 to 1718-ish. He was about 89 when he died. And the story was that he was a bit of a fierce warrior, and he was the chief of the Cameron clan in that area. And during a time when English were ruling over things, the governor of Inverlochy, which is now Fort William, sent some troops out to steal his cattle and burn his homes and whatever, because he had done something or other. And so a fight ensued, and one of the English officers was in a hand-to-hand combat with Sir Ewan, and Sir Ewan was pinned to the ground and about to go under when he reached up with his teeth and bit the throat of the Englishman and tore his throat out. Right. So, lovely little story to settle the stomach, right? Anyway, so this tune was written in praise of Sir Ewan, who was obviously somewhat of a warrior. But the follow-up to the story is that years later, as an older man, he was in London, and he went into a barber to have his beard and hair trimmed. And while he was in the chair, and the barber's, got the razor blade and trimming things up, the barber says to him, "You sound like you're from the North Country, sir." And he says, "I am." He said, "Do you know anyone from the North Country?" And he said, "No, and neither do I want to, because a man ripped the throat out of my father up there, and if I had him as close as I have you, I'd cut him ear to ear." And apparently it's a true story, and he exited with his throat not being cut and didn't have a shave again in London. So that's the story, true or not, and we're going to now have a bit of this tune. Thank you. I hope no one got blood splashed on them in that presentation. Next, we're going to play a tune that has what's sometimes called the Gallic idiom. It's from the west coast of Scotland, the note combinations and tones that were most prevalent in traditional Gallic music. Now, this is a relatively modern tune written in the 70s called Farewell to Nig, but it's written by Duncan Johnson, a man who was born and brought up on the Isle of Barra on the west coast of Scotland. So we'll have a go at that. Right. Yeah. Stage commentary. The next tune we're going to do is a tune that you may or may not have heard. It was written in the 1970s by a group called the Corries, and I can't remember the fellows' names right offhand. But they're a duo of Scottish folk singers, and they wrote this tune called Flower of Scotland, and it's kind of become the unofficial national anthem of Scotland. So if you're a rugby fan and you watch, rugby internationals or soccer internationals or kind of anything where Scotland is competing as a country, this is a tune you'll hear, Flower of Scotland. And we're going to have a go at it now. first ending wasn't
Yeah.
totally what we're hoping for. Okay, we're going to finish off with a little jig here called Rocking the Baby. And so feel free to rock away. I want to thank the group for coming out and playing. Playing an instrument like this is an adult in front of people. Well, these guys are kind of used to it because they play with a band, but you know, Kathy, she took some years to get her to actually do a performance. 15, yeah. So here we are. Anyway, these people work very hard at the piping all year long, and also in the P-Rock that we played earlier, Sir Ewan, John here was the winner of the P-Rock in the Highland Games for the adult class, and Shelley, who was out here earlier, was the winner of the March class for the adult class over the May long weekend in the Highland Games. So great work on their parts. So we're going to finish with, we're going to finish with Rockin' the Baby.
Thank you and good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan Wheeler, and I am one of the conductors of the Regina Community Orchestra. Thank you so much for coming out this evening, and what a pleasure it is to begin this program to close off such a lovely performance. Can we have another round of applause for the previous group? Lovely performances all around. It is my pleasure this evening to begin our program with a very special composition. This piece that we will begin with was actually composed by our very own Glenna Stewart on French horn. So the piece is entitled Moose Mountain. It is inspired by the great soundscapes of the natural world of where Glenna grew up here in Saskatchewan, and you will hear a few different animals across Glenna's experience here that she has put to music. And we were asked, Glenna was asked to compose this piece for the Saskatchewan Orchestral Association's 50th year, and was gracious enough to ask me to assist her in arranging it. So it has been a great pleasure of mine to work with Glenna on this piece, and I hope you enjoy it. This is Moose Mountain. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. And now, to continue the bulk of our program, it is my pleasure to introduce the RCO's music director, Maestro Adrian Casas.
There we go. How are you guys? Good? All right. Thank you very much for coming here. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. So it has been 13 years that I've been working with the Regina Community Orchestra, starting in 12 years, starting in 2013, and it has been a great pleasure working with these musicians. Obviously, COVID, was a struggle for a little bit, but then we were able to recover. Now we have the wonderful orchestra that you have in front of you. So we're going to continue with our program. This is something that we did for a winter concert festival that we did in February, and it's obviously it's very wintering. This is Sounds of Norway. We will continue with a piece that we haven't played with this orchestra before. It's a lovely piece. Here is selections from the album of the young Here is by Tchaikovsky. All right, so this is my my last apparition on the stage, and then Ryan will join us again. So this is a little bit of a teaser of what's going to happen a couple of weeks from now. We're having our own performance on June 12th, sorry. And yeah, this is a selection from Baroque pieces from the French repertoire that is compiled into one little catalog. So this is at the Court of Versailles. Thank you very much, everyone. And so this is a little bit of a passing the baton ritual because, again, as I described earlier, I've been with this orchestra for 13 years, and I think it's my turn to leave the podium and give it to someone much more talented and much more handsomer than I am. So please welcome again, Maestro Ryan Will.
Thank you very much, everybody. And to close our program out tonight, very, very special treat, certainly from the bottom of my heart. We've worked very hard on it over the past, 8 months? Several? Anyway. We leave you tonight with music from Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers by Howard Shore.